a multi-million-dollar penthouse in Sao Paulo. Dead silence. The biometric security system is still fully armed. No forced entry, no signs of a struggle. Inside the master bedroom, a half-read book rests on the duvet, but the owner has completely vanished into thin air. The only thing left behind? A flawless, radiant pink orchid on the nightstand. It's breathing a sweet, cloying scent into the empty room. Mainstream science calls it phototropism, but biology calls it the ultimate camouflage. This isn't a plant. It's an apex predator that forced itself to evolve for one specific, terrifying resource: us. Welcome to the dark frontiers of speculative evolution. The botanical markets of Brazil are legendary for their chaotic, beautiful explosion of color and life, attracting thousands of visitors daily. Yet, tucked away behind the endless rows of common lilies, classic roses, and standard ferns, certain highly exclusive stalls have recently begun offering something entirely different. The Midnight Orchids stand out immediately. Their thick petals feature a striking gradient of deep magentas and creamy porcelain whites. When you run a finger over them, they feel remarkably cool and smooth, lacking the typical organic texture of a common plant. Busy professionals and wealthy collectors adore them because they appear to be entirely immortal. They remain perfectly still, vibrant, and incredibly fresh for weeks on end without a single drop of water or attention. It is the dream decoration for a fast-paced, aesthetic-driven life. However, local whispers in the market suggest these perfect plants are not being grown in commercial greenhouses at all. Instead, specialized harvesting crews are said to retrieve them from the deepest, most untouched and unexplored sectors of the Atlantic forest. There is a specific, primal kind of dread that accompanies the realization that your private living space has been altered without your knowledge. In several documented, unexplained cases across the affluent suburbs of Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo, families have reported a strange, creeping sequence of events they refer to as the finning. It always begins with the quiet disappearance of small things. A prized pet canary vanishes from its locked wire cage without a single broken bar, a loose feather, or a trace of a struggle. The family dog or cat suddenly refuses to enter the living room, standing frozen at the threshold with its fur bristling, hissing violently at a harmless vase of flowers sitting on the coffee table. Soon after, the human inhabitants themselves begin to experience a heavy, unnatural lethargy that no amount of sleep can remedy. They wake up in the mornings feeling completely drained, noticing tiny, neat, pinpoint marks on their skin that they easily attribute to common household insects. They carry an inexplicable, persistent sensation of being watched while walking down their own dark hallways, while the air in the home grows thick with an overwhelming, syrupy, floral perfume. Biological mimicry is a thoroughly documented, fascinating reality of the natural world. We see it in the clever stripes of a harmless hoverfly imitating a venomous wasp, or the way a walking stick insect completely disappears against a dry branch. But the Midnight Orchid represents a theoretical, terrifying leap in evolution that utterly defies standard botanical classification. Observations from specialized researchers, though routinely dismissed by mainstream academic institutions, suggest an entity that has mastered the art of the living statue. This specimen does not merely look like a flower, it adopts the absolute essence of one. It produces a chemical scent that perfectly mimics high-quality, luxury floral perfumes, and its physical texture is completely indistinguishable from a delicate, fresh petal. Yet, beneath this fragile mask of natural beauty lies a complex biological architecture designed for one specific purpose: the absolute, motionless stillness of a patient predator that knows its target will eventually walk right to it. The transition from a decorative household object to an active, mobile presence is said to be nearly imperceptible to the human eye. It begins with the incredibly subtle shift of a leaf when the room is entirely empty. You return home from a long day at work and notice that the orchid, which was facing the sunlit window in the morning, is now angled slightly toward your favorite armchair. You quickly dismiss it as a natural, harmless tendency of plants to follow the light source. But at night, when the ambient noise of the metropolis fades and the structure of the house settles into a heavy silence, the flower begins to breathe. The petals, once rigid and decorative, become supple and alive. They unfold with a soft, sliding sound, no louder than a silk scarf whispering across a polished wooden floor. The most unsettling reports from survivors describe the slow emergence of dark, glossy structures from within the intricate patterns of the flower's throat. These are not the soft, warm eyes of a mammal, but the multifaceted, cold, shimmering sensory organs of an apex predator. Consider the puzzling case of Elena Voss, a highly successful interior designer who purchased one of these midnight specimens for her luxury penthouse apartment as a housewarming gift to herself. She heavily documented the plant's stunning beauty on her social media platforms, constantly praising its incredible longevity and maintenance-free nature to her thousands of followers. Within 3 weeks of her purchase, her daily posts abruptly stopped. When her sister eventually used a spare key to enter the penthouse, she found the living space perfectly undisturbed. The bed was neatly made, her wallet and keys were resting on the kitchen counter, and there was absolutely no sign of Elena. The only thing out of place was the orchid on the nightstand. It had grown significantly larger, its colors far more vivid than they had been in her photos, its petals almost glowing with an oily, healthy sheen. There was no evidence of a break-in, no forced entry, and no struggle. There was only a faint, sweet, cloying scent lingering in the air that made the sister feel a sudden, overwhelming need to sit down on the bed and close her eyes. Experts in fringe biology suggest that these highly evolved creatures may have adapted specifically to exploit the human desire for aesthetic luxury and natural beauty. In the wild, an orchid mantis mimics a flower to catch unsuspecting pollinating insects. But as human civilization rapidly encroached upon their deep forest habitats, these creatures may have adapted to target a much larger, far more abundant resource. By evolving to look exactly like the specific species of orchids that wealthy humans find most desirable, they have effortlessly bypassed every security measure we have ever built. We do not just allow them into our homes, we willingly pay thousands of dollars for the luxury of doing so. We take them home and place them in our most vulnerable private spaces, our bedrooms, our dining tables, and our nurseries. We provide them with a perfectly climate-controlled environment, entirely free from their natural competitors, and then we close the front door, lock it tight, and go to sleep. The viral low-resolution footage that has been circulating on certain encrypted messaging apps is incredibly difficult to verify, yet it remains profoundly haunting to those who have viewed it. In one particular clip, a time-lapse security camera set up in a private study to record a blooming flower captures something else entirely. As the digital clock in the corner of the screen hits exactly 3 in the morning, the motionless pink flower in the center of the frame begins to slowly extend long, elegant, jointed limbs. These appendages are tipped with tiny, curved hooks as sharp as surgical needles. It moves with a terrifying, fluid grace, climbing down the smooth glass vase without making a single audible sound. It does not crawl like a frantic insect. It flows like dark liquid. The camera captures it exploring the desk, touching household objects with highly sensitive, hair-like antennae before it returns to its water-filled vase, refolding its limbs and settling back into a perfect, motionless bloom, just minutes before the sun rises over the horizon. The account that posted the video has been inactive for months. Now, look closer at the Midnight Orchid sitting on your table. Notice how the thick petals are actually segmented, resembling a hardened, pigmented exoskeleton. Notice how the central stem has a slight, barely visible rhythmic pulse if you watch it with absolute focus for long enough. If you were to reach out and touch those soft petals, would they feel like cool, damp plant matter? Or would you feel the faint, unsettling warmth of an active metabolism hidden just beneath the surface? The most disturbing biological theories suggest that these creatures are not just mindless, solitary predators, but possess a highly organized, collective intelligence. They communicate over vast distances through airborne pheromones, carefully coordinating their presence in a city to ensure they are never numerous enough to attract official scrutiny, but always present enough to feed and thrive. The global market for these exotic flowers continues to expand at an exponential rate. They are being heavily exported now, tucked away in the temperature-controlled cargo holds of international flights, traveling to affluent boutiques in London, New York, Tokyo, and Paris. They arrive in elegant, minimalist shops, wrapped in expensive tissue paper and tied with heavy silk ribbons.
Oh, it's
They are
beautiful.
bought and given as
You really
thoughtful
shouldn't
gifts
have.
for wedding anniversaries, milestone
Only the
birthdays,
best for you,
and luxury
my dear.
housewarmings. Each one is a silent, patient passenger, a master of disguise, waiting for the lights of the new home to go out. The unsuspecting people who receive them are absolutely delighted by their miraculous longevity and their clean, uncanny symmetry. They place them on their bedside tables, just inches away from their exposed necks and faces, and they slowly drift off into a deep, floral-scented sleep, completely unaware that the centerpiece of their bedroom is beginning to unfold in the dark. There is currently no official warning, investigation, or statement from any government agency regarding these plants. To issue such a warning would require academic institutions to admit that our fundamental understanding of modern biology is deeply flawed, that there are massive, terrifying gaps in our knowledge of the natural world. Instead, the scientific community remains largely silent, officially citing a complete lack of physical specimens to study. But that is the absolute genius of the Midnight Orchid. You cannot easily study a biological specimen that refuses to be caught. A specimen that successfully hides in plain sight in the most prestigious, highly publicized flower shows in the world. It is a ghost in the greenhouse, a shadow in the crystal vase. It is a quiet testament to the fact that evolutionary adaptation does not stop just because we have built concrete walls, steel beams, and towering glass structures to keep the wild at bay. Imagine the absolute silence of a high-rise apartment at 4 o'clock in the morning. The distant lights of the city flicker through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but inside the bedroom, the air is perfectly still and heavy. The only scent in the dark room is the thick, sweet perfume of the orchid resting on the dresser. Slowly, the magenta petals begin to twitch. They do not bloom. They detach from one another. Long, spindly, jointed appendages, perfectly disguised as green leaves during the day, reach out to grip the polished edge of the wood. The creature does not make a single sound as it pulls its heavy central mass out of the water-filled glass vase. It does not need the water. It has been waiting for something much more substantial, something warm. It moves across the carpeted floor with the terrifying grace of a dancer, its shimmering, multifaceted eyes scanning the darkness, settling on the rhythmic, slow rise and fall of a sleeping chest. If you have purchased a beautiful orchid recently, perhaps you should take a much closer look at it tonight. Turn off every single light in your home, sit quietly in the far corner of the room, and do not make a sound. Wait patiently for your eyes to fully adjust to the pitch blackness. Listen closely for the faint sound of something soft, dry, and fibrous brushing against the air. If you see a leaf or a petal move against the windless, stagnant air of your closed room, or if you catch the reflection of a pair of shimmering, multifaceted eyes catching the faint moonlight, do not run, and do not make a sudden movement. To a highly evolved predator of this caliber, sudden movement is an active invitation. The Midnight Orchid has spent millions of years perfecting the slow, silent art of the wait. It is incredibly patient. It is breathtakingly beautiful, and it is very, very hungry. The boundary we have constructed between the safe domestic world and the hostile wild is rapidly thinning. We spend our entire lives trying to curate, secure, and organize our surroundings, desperately trying to make everything safe, predictable, and aesthetically pleasing. But the mystery of the Midnight Orchid serves as a chilling reminder that beauty can be a highly efficient weapon of survival. It reminds us that in the quietest shadows of our own homes, there are ancient mysteries that remain completely unsolved, and secrets that are perhaps better left undisturbed. As the sun sets tonight and the sweet, heavy floral scent in your bedroom begins to grow noticeably stronger, ask yourself, is that simply a beautiful flower resting in your glass vase, or is it a silent guest that has finally decided it is time to feed? The next time you walk through a vibrant flower market, remember that not everything that blooms is a plant, and not everything that stays perfectly still is dead. The global mystery of the Midnight Orchid remains an open file, a series of bizarre coincidences that form a terrifying, cohesive picture when viewed from the correct angle. It is a modern story of rapid evolution, brilliant adaptation, and the hidden, terrifying price of human vanity. Whether it is a biological reality or a sophisticated urban myth, the practical result remains the same. A lingering, chilling doubt that creepily resurfaces every single time we look at a fresh bouquet of flowers. We want to believe we are at the absolute top of the food chain, the undisputed masters of our constructed environments. But in the quietest hours of the night, when the only sound is the soft rustle of a petal in the dark, we are reminded that we are still just a fragile part of a larger ecosystem. And sometimes, the ecosystem comes home with us. We built our concrete towers to keep the monsters of the wild outside. We never expected to willingly carry them through our own front doors, wrap them in silk ribbons, and place them inches away from our exposed necks while we sleep. So, tonight, turn off every single light in your house, sit in the pitch blackness, and just listen. If you catch the faint, fibrous brush of a petal moving against the stagnant air, do not run. To a predator of this caliber, sudden movement is an active invitation. Look at the corner of your room right now. Are your houseplants just tracking the sunlight? Or are they silently waiting for you to close your eyes? If you've noticed any unexplainable lethargy or a sudden syrupy sweet scent in your home, drop your location and your story in the comments below. Let's look at the data together before the lights permanently go out. Subscribe to What If Animals and stay awake.